During a visit to the Infosys office in Bangalore, India, Thomas Friedman had an epiphany. As he strolled the grounds and observed the swimming pool, the putting green, the steel and glass buildings, and the massive conference room where 40 screens combined to form a single giant screen that filled the wall, he suddenly realized that intellectual work could now be done anywhere, and the playing field between India and America is being leveled. In other words, the world is becoming flat. A flat world is all about connections. When the world's knowledge centers connect, they create networks that are well positioned to develop innovations that can create prosperity for all. But this flattening world is not without its drawbacks. For example, in a flat world, terrorists can also connect and form networks that empower their own ends. This snapshot explores the process of flattening and its implications, and specifically examines the 10 forces that flatten the world. These technological advances and social shifts work together to change the world. America and the flat world. The U.S. should embrace globalization rather than fear it, but the U.S. must also be prepared. Companies and individuals in the flat world. The flat world creates new opportunities for large and small companies and individual entrepreneurs. Geopolitics and the flat world. What will happen to the billions of people who are left out of the flat world? Imagination. How the next generation can succeed in the flat world. How the world became flat. The power in organizations used to flow vertically along strict hierarchical lines. Today, those hierarchies are being challenged from below to create power distributions among organizations that are more horizontal. Instead of command and control, people seek to connect and collaborate. The flattening of the world is as significant a development as the printing press or the Industrial Revolution, but this particular shift is happening much faster than any of the cultural shifts in the past. Depending on who you talk to, this shift is primarily creating exciting opportunities or dangerous new threats. How did this flattening happen? Friedman identifies 10 events, technologies, and trends that together flattened the world. 1. The fall of the Berlin Wall let more people share ideas and shifted the balance of the world's economies toward free market capitalism and away from authoritarian central planning. 2. The Netscape browser made the Internet accessible to everyone, not just geeks and early adopters. 3. Workflow software allowed people to collaborate with each other in virtual offices, no matter where they were. 4. Uploading gave individuals and communities the ability to distribute their own content. 5. Thanks to outsourcing, companies can acquire highly skilled, motivated, and cheaper workers while employees in emerging countries receive higher pay and better opportunities without having to leave home. 6. Unlike outsourcing, which sends a specific, limited function to another country, offshoring moves whole factories overseas. When China opened itself to offshoring, it started a wave of competition from other countries that also wanted to attract jobs, flattening the world even more. 7. Supply chaining involves manufacturers like Dell or retail companies like Walmart buying parts or products from many suppliers around the world, using a complex system to put it all together. 8. Smaller companies that can't afford their own Walmart-style system of supply chaining benefit from insourcing, wherein companies like UPS design and manage global supply chains for them. 9. Google and other search engines have given people an unprecedented ability to find information on their own. Search engines act as a personal supply chain of information and entertainment, a process Friedman calls informing. 10. Friedman recognizes steroids, such as increases in computer processing speeds and storage capacities, that amplify the other flatteners. When he wrote The World is Flat in 2005, Friedman peered into his crystal ball and described what he saw as technological marvels of the future. Many of these are now commonplace and taken for granted. The ability to carry movies in our pockets, make long-distance phone calls that cost no more than local ones, and connect devices to the web everywhere we go, no longer astounds or impresses us. These technological advances all helped flatten the world by breaking down barriers to communication and competition. America and the Flat World. Free trade in a flat world hurts some Americans who are unable to compete on price with workers overseas. But free trade will be good for America as a whole, provided that we have open, unrestricted markets and that we educate Americans to become competitive on a global stage. People who see free trade as a threat argue that America must protect its jobs from foreign competition. Otherwise, they claim, our wages will drop to a new low. Friedman responds by arguing that if wages go down, it will only be temporary as long as the total global economy continues to grow. Instead of wages in the West dropping to the level seen in emerging countries, the opposite will happen. The wages of educated workers in developing countries will rise to meet the standards of the West. We tend to notice significant job loss whenever large American companies outsource their work overseas, but we don't usually acknowledge the even greater number of jobs that small businesses create. As the global pie grows, more people will have more money to spend, which will create a need for new products and services and job specialties. Knowledge-based workers will have new opportunities to create products based on innovative ideas. There's no limit to the number of potential knowledge-based jobs except the limits of the human imagination. And if knowledge workers lose their jobs, they can move horizontally into the new specialized jobs. Manual workers won't be as lucky. The expanding market won't help them because they can only sell their services to one employer at a time. Therefore, their incomes will go down if their jobs get moved elsewhere. The solution is to upgrade their education and skills. All American workers must prepare to compete with people from around the world. We need to enhance our technical skills as well as our self-motivation and psychological flexibility. We'll have to work a little harder than people did in the past. In a flattened world, mediocrity and lack of passion aren't going to fly. Outsourcing isn't the only thing costing the developed world jobs. Automation has an even stronger impact on our job market. If you want a job that's not going to disappear soon, look for something that can't be done just as well and for less money by a robot or talented person in an emerging country. The jobs of people who are special in some way, like pop stars and brain surgeons, should be safe, as well as jobs like barbers and divorce lawyers that are tied to a specific physical place, either because they must be done in person or because they require extensive local knowledge. Many middle-class jobs such as accounting clerk or security analyst are less safe. Wages in these jobs may stagnate. In the meantime, new middle-class jobs will emerge. Success in these new jobs will require skills that are in demand in a flattened world. Collaborators, inspiring team leaders, synthesizers, and explainers should all do well. In particular, there are 5 skill sets and attitudes that are essential to adapt to the flat world. Knowing how to learn, navigating the online world and being able to separate the virtual wheat from the chaff, passion and curiosity, the ability to make connections between different fields of knowledge, creativity. To be progressive in a flattened world, Americans must embrace globalism. We can't just shore up the old welfare state or try to dismantle it. Instead, we must reconfigure our society. We need the following: leaders who will help us become employable in the flat world instead of trying to protect us from foreign competition. Tools to build lifetime employability rather than a program of guaranteed lifetime employment. Portable job benefits. Opportunities for lifelong learning and a chance for every American to get a higher education. Wage insurance to tide over workers temporarily if their jobs are downsized or outsourced. Parenting that builds character by emphasizing hard work instead of instant gratification. Companies and individuals in the flat world. Even small companies and individuals can now operate multinationally and acquire both supplies and customers from anywhere in the world. Small companies can act as if they're big by using the technological tools that are now available. Big companies, meanwhile, can act as if they're small by collaborating with their customers. To succeed, companies should focus on the core competencies that differentiate them from the competition and outsource everything else. They should also focus on how they conduct business, how they treat their customers, employees, suppliers, and investors. This will help them stand out because today, everything else is easy to copy and commodify. Of course, there are downsides to the technology that enables the flattened world. Many of us are so plugged in that we often miss what's right in front of us. The devices that connect us also divide us. And we must constantly deal with more interruptions and distractions. The capacity of microchips to process information may double every 2 years, but the capacity of our brains to process that information doesn't. Geopolitics and the Flat World. Friedman took some literary license in titling his book The World is Flat. In reality, only half of the world now participates in its flattening, and there's no guarantee the rest of the world will ever join in. Additionally, the flattening we've already experienced could be halted, or even reversed. Being middle class is a state of mind, not an absolute income value. It's the hope that your children will have a higher standard of living than you do, and a hope that billions of people aren't overlooked because they're too sick, lack mobility, or live in the midst of violence or civil war. There are also hundreds of millions of people living between the flat and unflat worlds. These people are close enough to see the attractions of the flat world, but don't benefit from it themselves. This creates a dangerous situation because terrorism is spawned by feelings of humiliation, frustration turning into rage, and a desire to retaliate. The best way to help the rural poor is not to put up protectionist barriers, but to improve local government, education, and infrastructure so people have the tools to participate in the flat world. Energy is another problem. People in the developed world consume 32 times as much energy and create 32 times as much waste as people in developing nations. If everyone was able to enter the flat world, we would soon run out of fossil fuels and other natural resources, which would create more international conflicts and environmental damage. Imagination. Imagination shapes the world, whether that's the creative imagination when the Berlin Wall came down or the destructive imagination of 9/11. We need to encourage people to focus on positive outcomes and to look ahead instead of back at an imagined past. America must become an example to the world by exporting hope, not fear. The greatest danger we face is that our fears will cause us to wall ourselves off in a misguided attempt to create security or economic protectionism. This would be a disaster for both the U.S. and the world as a whole. Friedman's message for the next generation is simple. The world is being flattened. You can't stop it, but you can help shape it. Don't live in fear of either terrorism or global competition. You can flourish if you have the right type of imagination and motivation. Focus more on your dreams than your memories. Imagine that things can be better and act on that vision every day. Conclusion. We are living in a time of great change thanks to a number of converging global forces. The flat world offers new opportunities for those who are prepared to take them, but we need to make sure that people have the right education and the necessary infrastructure to succeed. For the developing world, globalization can be a door that leads out of poverty, but it can also stir up resentment and violence among those who are close enough to observe the prosperity of the flat world without benefiting from it themselves. For Americans, the flat world will be beneficial as long as we don't try to wall ourselves off from the rest of the world. Some existing jobs may be lost to outsourcing or automation, but knowledge workers can find many new jobs, limited only by their imaginations. As a country, we will thrive if we encourage hope and not fear.